Welcome back. It is 5 p.m. and we want to continue with the second portion of our program. Before I get into the brief introduction, I would like to first thank Dr. Chitnitz for doing an outstanding job emceeing the first portion of the program with the Research and Extension Award ceremony. So I want to thank you to our partner for doing such an outstanding job of facilitating those sessions. We will conclude today's agenda with the Seaman Knapp Memorial Lecture. Here to introduce today's speaker is USDA Deputy Undersecretary for Research, Education, and Economics, my friend, Dr. Scott Hutchins. Scott.
Thank you, Dr. McMeans. Wow, what a wonderful afternoon indeed. So inspirational to celebrate the breadth of work contributed by the esteemed award recipients in extension and research. Just inspirational. But now it's time to hear from Dr. Joan Farini Mundy, this year's Seaman Knapp Memorial Lecturer. Dr. Farini Mundy is the president of the University of Maine and its regional campus, the University of Maine at Machias. Prior to joining UMaine and UMN communities in July of 2018, she was the Chief Operating Officer at the National Science Foundation. After receiving her PhD in mathematics education from the University of New Hampshire in 1980, Dr. Farini Mundy was a postdoctoral associate there and a visiting assistant professor in the Department of Mathematics at Mount Holyoke College. While there, she co-founded the Summer Math for Teachers program before returning to UNH as a professor of mathematics. While on leave from UNH, she served as director of the Mathematical Sciences Education Board at the National Academy of Sciences and subsequently joined the Mathematics and Teacher Education faculty at Michigan State University. There, she also served as Associate Dean for Science and Mathematics Education in the College of Natural Science and Director of the Division of Science and Mathematics Education. At NSF, Dr. Farini Mundy headed the Directorate for Education and Human Resources for 6 years before being named the COO, the Chief Operating Officer. Her distinguished career spans the fields of mathematics education, STEM education and policy, teacher education, and research administration. She has more than 100 publications and has mentored 10 doctoral students. Among her awards and recognitions are the U.S. Senior Executive Service Presidential Rank Award of Distinguished Executives, MSU's University Distinguished Professorship, and election as a Fellow of the American Association of the Advancement of Science and the American Mathematical Society. Currently, Dr. Farini Mundy co-chairs the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Mathematics Expert Group Program for International Student Assessment 2021 and is a member of the National Academy's Board on Higher Education and the Workforce. She is leading the development of the University of Maine System Plan for Research and Development. Dr. Farini Mundy serves on the boards of Maine Center Ventures and Maine and Company and is an ex officio board member of the University of Maine Foundation. Dr. Farini Mundy, thank you so much for joining us today and congratulations on being selected as the lecturer for this important award. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Joan Farini Mundy. Dr. Mundy?
Thank you so much, Dr. Hutchins. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Very good. Thank you so much. And congratulations to all of the awardees who presented such impressive work in the previous part of this meeting. Thank you all and good afternoon. I am deeply honored to be presenting the 2020 Seaman A. Knapp Lecture. I'd like to thank Dr. Hannah Carter and Dr. Kimberly Whitehead, who nominated me for this honor. Thank you also to Parag Chitnis. Parag, it has been a while since we were at NSF together, and NIFA for making this possible, and to APLU and its wonderful leader, Peter McPherson. I also wish to acknowledge my colleagues listed here who helped prepare this presentation. The University of Maine is the land-grant university at which I have the privilege of serving as president right now. I am also pleased to have been a faculty member and administrator in 2 other land-grant universities, the University of New Hampshire and Michigan State University. A commonality among these institutions is that they truly are focused on their land-grant mission. I grew up with this commitment academically, and it is central now to how I think about my leadership at the University of Maine. It has been fascinating to learn about Seaman Knapp, and there are several good accounts of his history, his story, and his contributions. He lived from 1833 to 1911. In addition to being a pastor, a superintendent of the Iowa State School for the Blind, and president of Iowa Agricultural College, he was an accomplished and well-published practical and experimental agriculturist. The breadth of his work was remarkable. Over his career, he worked on many problems: sheep farming, rice cultivation, boll weevil management in cotton, production of corn, farm machinery, and irrigation systems. His career took him to different parts of the country where he worked in diverse environments and conditions and with different communities. He spent time in New York, Vermont, Iowa, and Louisiana. Knapp is credited with being the father of modern 4-H and extension programs as his most significant contributions. Dr. Knapp also had an MSU connection. He was interested in and influenced by the publications of a group called the Teachers of Agriculture in Michigan Agricultural College in 1881. Indeed, in the years following his innovations in the South, and no doubt through his strong connections to the first U.S. Commissioner of Agriculture, James Wilson, the Smith-Lever Act of 1914 was passed to provide for agricultural extension programs in all states. The nation's land-grant universities continue to benefit from that legislation today. Dr. Knapp seems to have been both ingenious and persistent. For instance, while promoting the usefulness of rice, he reportedly enlisted his wife, Maria, to write a rice cookbook. 500,000 copies were published, according to one of his biographers, Klein. Knapp came from humble roots and grew up in New York and Vermont. He aspired to be educated. In an account of his life by his daughter, Maria Mayo, she noted that when he decided to go to college rather than to continue to work in his brother's cabinet shop in Vermont, his brother is said to have said, quote, "the spoiling of a fine cabinet maker to make a poor scholar." Well, he turned out to be a great scholar. In the same account, his wife is quoted as having said, "he never cared for a position after the knotty," that's Knotty, "problems were solved, and someone else could take up the work and follow it successfully." I'll use some of the themes from Seaman Knapp's story to frame my own remarks, illustrating how extension and 4-H are so integral to the University of Maine and to our role in the state of Maine, especially in the pandemic and our recovery. He was committed to practical learning or applied learning. He wanted to solve hard problems, which in turn helped local agriculturalists and youth, which in turn built communities. He believed that farmers would learn through experience, using science as a base. I also need to tell you a little bit about the University of Maine, as our story, even up to and through what has happened in the pandemic, is actually intertwined with these themes from Seaman Knapp. We owe our existence to Maine farmers and agriculture leaders. According to UMaine historian David Smith, in the late 1840s, a group of Maine farmers met with members of the Maine House of Representatives to call for an agricultural school. Around that time, the State Board of Agriculture was formed in 1849. Let me say more about the State Board of Agriculture. 170 years later, it is still going strong. When it is meeting in Augusta, I organize my schedule to be there, as have UMaine presidents before me. By statute, the board advises the chancellor of our system, the president of UMaine, and our extension areas on matters concerning the research conducted by the Maine Agricultural and Forest Experiment Station and the agricultural related educational programs offered through extension. Now back to the founding of UMaine. The call from the farmers, closely aligned with Knapp's ideas, was, in the words of the Norway, that would be Norway, Maine, advertiser, quote, "an agricultural school in connection with a stock or pattern farm, where the theory and practice of agriculture could be combined, where the principles of science as they were learned by the study of books and the teachings of competent instructors could be, day by day, applied to the operations of the farm. It would elevate the character of our farmers." By making farming more scientific, presumably more interesting and more productive, they theorized that such an approach would solve the prevalent Maine problem of, quote, "how to keep the boys home," from the Portland Farmer and Artisan in 1852. As the new college was being formed, and this is a scene, well, you don't see exactly the scene on our campus, but the building in the background is Carnegie Hall, one of the original Carnegie buildings that housed our library in the early years. As the new college was being formed, the influential first chair of the board of the University of Maine, Phineas Barnes, urged that the main strengths should be agriculture, mechanical arts, and the study of the sea. Our land-grant university was established in Orono, Maine in 1865. When the first students arrived in 1868, the farm was in operation, and in 1867 had produced 100 tons of hay, 10 tons of straw, and 600 bushels of apples. And there were 7 cows, 2 which were newly purchased. This picture must have been taken a little later. At the founding, an experiment station and model farm were recommended, and special lectures for practicing farmers were offered. Today, we are a land, sea, and space grant university. In fiscal year 2020, UMaine's research awards totaled more than $125 million. Cooperative extension began at UMaine in 1914, and 4-H is managed through extension. Also in fiscal 20, UMaine Cooperative Extension was awarded about $3 million in competitive grants to fund applied research and educational programs to meet the needs of Maine people. When I arrived at the University of Maine in the summer of 2018, those in charge of my schedule began filling it with what they apparently felt to be the most important visits I needed to make. And they were right. Those visits were to 4-H camps, to the Freiburg Fair for a visit with the director of our 4-H Foundation, to a statewide tour with prospective legislators that took in Maine farms and agriculture-related companies. In fact, at the dairy production facility that we visited, the person in charge of the daily milk delivery was able to tell me specifically the statistics about UMaine's delivery from that day, from our dairy herd and from the milk that we produce. And that was before I even knew we had a dairy herd. It was a very valuable set of visits. There was a meeting of the Maine Board of Agriculture on the calendar in ink with no option for missing it. And because John Rebar, the excellent director of UMaine Extension at that time, had been on the presidential search committee and was legendary, I knew there was a good reason for all of that outreach, and I've come to understand that in the years that followed. It is clear that the main institutional values of the University of Maine were very deeply rooted in the founding of the universities at the hands of the Maine Board of Agriculture in 1865. The first president of Maine State College doubled as the farm manager. The first purchases of the Maine State College were farm implements, and the site on which this land-grant institution was launched housed a farm. The practical Maine leaders took the view that, quote, nothing speeds the plow or fattens the crops like brains, from the chair of the state board. This was happening contemporaneously with the movement that Seaman Knapp was accelerating, a view that science could improve farming and that a practical participatory education enabled progress. The first Maine State College students did not have access to the, quote, ball, teams, and boat clubs that were available to the well-established private liberal arts colleges in Maine, Bowdoin, Bates, and Colby. Rather, they would earn their way with the expectation that they would work on the farm. So in March of 2020, an international pandemic happens. And being clear about our values as an institution proves to be more important than ever in dealing with it. We must remain focused on the fact that our students, our learners, are our reasons for existing. And one of our own 3 strategic values is fostering learner success. In March of this year, we all were pivoting to put our academic courses online and to put all of our extension programs online. Dean Carter tells me that, quote, she often told groups that we took an over 100-year-old organization and in the course of several weeks, completely changed the way extension operates. We may have had online programs in the past, but never with the breadth and depth of these. However, at UMaine now, in a pandemic, as in 1865, we think of the learners that we serve very broadly, as did Seaman Knapp. And our UMaine extension exemplifies that, as it does the solving of knotty problems that affect the state and our partners. We might call them wicked problems here in Maine. Seaman Knapp was about meeting the problems of the moment and solving them collaboratively with the field. And that happens at UMaine. When it became clear that Maine farmers would face serious challenges to moving their products in the supply chain in standard ways as restaurants closed and as the patterns of need and demand were shifting, our extension team moved rapidly into action to create the Maine Farm and Seafood Products Directory. This interactive tool provides information on available local farm products and pickup options consistent with COVID-19 required social distancing. To date, it has been viewed more than 180,000 times and has allowed many small farms to not only survive, but to thrive and exceed their 2020 projections, which kept money in communities, allowed for people to meet their farmers, and strengthened ties to local agriculture. In a style that surely would have made Seaman Knapp proud, but that he probably couldn't have imagined, UMaine Extension initiated weekly Maine farmer Zoom meetings for farmers to share and stay connected. Those continued until summer field work and farm direct marketing commenced. They also served as a vehicle for local, state, and national policymakers to hear directly from growers on their needs and concerns. As the leaders of the University of Maine system realized that the only way we could reopen in the fall of 2020 would be to have robust COVID-19 testing apparatus ready, our extension colleagues saw new possibilities for our cooperative extension diagnostic and research laboratory. The lab was developed with state bonding and is an invaluable resource to Maine in areas from tick testing, plant disease testing, to veterinary diagnostic services. Already a biosafety level 3 BSL-3 facility, we moved rapidly into action last spring to obtain emergency clinical laboratory improvement amendments, or CLIA, certification for that lab. Our primary on-campus COVID-19 testing programs involve many external partners and labs, but given the collaborative and foresightful work of our colleagues in Extension, in several of our science departments, in athletics, in operations and facilities, we soon will put into place our own in-house capacity for analysis of rapid antigen testing for COVID, and we hope to process for student athletes and others. Just as Dr. Knapp took on problems spanning many disciplines and areas with many collaborators, we do that too at the University of Maine. For example, the emerald ash borer is well known as a deep threat to our ash forests in Maine. Less well known perhaps, but well known to us here, is that the bark of the ash tree is a preferred material for the extraordinary basket-making traditions of the Wabanaki people in Maine. And I need to acknowledge here at this point that the University of Maine sits on Penobscot land. UMaine anthropologist Dr. Darren Ranko, a member of the Penobscot Nation, with an award from USDA's Forest Service, led a decade-long research project in collaboration with tribal basket makers and other stakeholders to anticipate and get ready for the arrival of this pest in our state. The project used sustainability science and indigenous research methods together to make a difference for the community. Dr. Knapp was focused on building a better future, and he kept moving forward and looking for new opportunities. We do that here too. Aquaculture is an emerging industry for Maine and is considered an important expansion of our heritage industries of forestry, fisheries, and farming. You may not know that Maine has 3,478 miles of coastline, more than California, and less than only Florida and Louisiana, because they have bayous. In the past 10 years, there has been a 2.2% annual growth in aquaculture here, with an impact of $140 million annually on the Maine economy. The University of Maine Aquaculture Research Institute, in a wonderful partnership with the USDA Agricultural Research Service and Auburn University, has established the first aquaculture field research station, called the Aquaculture Experiment Station, taking Knapp's agricultural research stations to the next level. This is based at our Darling Marine Center in Walpole, Maine. I need to make a brief digression here for another Seaman Knapp connection. Turns out that his son, Bradford Knapp, was president of Alabama Polytechnic Institute, and that is now Auburn University, our partner in this new venture. Everything seems to be connected. At the Darling Marine Center, our marine scientists work with mathematical modelers, engineers who design sensor-filled buoys, fishermen, and community members, alongside students who will define tomorrow for this growth area. And this is very practical work for our state and is key to our Sea Grant commitment. One way to build the future is to attend to the next generation and be sure that it is educated with science. Definitely a key tenet for Dr. Knapp. Surely influenced by the leadership and novel ideas of Seaman Knapp, quote, boys and girls clubs work in agriculture and home economics began in Maine in 1913 with state level leadership, extending the efforts that had previously been the purview of the Granges. Here you see a photograph of Ava Chadbourne. From the outset, these boys and girls clubs worked in partnership with Maine schools, as well as the university, where the renowned Miss Chadbourne ran the home economics clubs for more than a quarter of a century. I read in a piece on the history of 4-H in Maine that the crowning event of that club year, 1914, quote, was the first state contest for the club program held at the University of Maine in Orono. I am pleased to report that despite a pandemic, 106 years later, our 4-H and Extension organization put together a Maine State Virtual Fair 2020 with a virtual exhibit hall and opportunities for 4-H youth to put their work forward. And that built on the Maine 4-H virtual science cafes called, this is really great, Quarantine, like T-E-E-N, virtual science cafes, where UMaine scientists have engaged with Maine high school students. Topics have included wildlife forensics, fish behavior, bio-inspired engineering, food science, raising beef cattle, and moldy plants. I did try to visit the 4-H camps this summer, but of course they were closed, yet the work did continue. Our main 4-H program includes 4 4-H camps and learning centers located in rural areas across the state. Due to the pandemic, our summer camping programs were shuttered for 2020, but with Knapp-like fortitude, our camp staff pivoted as well. They turned our camp facilities into food distribution centers, as they realized early on that youth would need outside experiences to help balance their online screen time. They also developed our Camp in the Box program and Wednesdays in the Woods outdoor activities. Now they are playing a critical role in K-12 education in the state by offering positive outside experiential learning to local school systems who are wanting safe and educational outdoor experiences for children. We think Seaman Knapp would be proud of the efforts of our 4-H camp staff. In Maine, Extension and 4-H are thriving, which indicates many things. First, these enterprises would never have survived without being so central to the core values of our university of fostering learner success, discovering and innovating, and expanding our partnerships. Second, these enterprises would never have thrived without being connected to so many other parts of the university and legitimized in all of the right ways. Beginning in 2018, UMaine moved from having a director of cooperative extension to having a dean of cooperative extension. The inaugural holder of that position, whom I've mentioned, is Dr. Hannah Carter, an outstanding leader. Dr. Carter is not only a native of northern Maine, the county as we call it, she was a youth leader in Maine 4-H herself, spent 20 years working with extension leadership programs in the University of Florida, and now she's back in Maine, leading extension to new heights and offering collaboration, commitment to Maine, and relentless enthusiasm. UMaine Extension is a sought-after partner across our university by the colleges of education, business, natural sciences, forestry, and agriculture, and engineering, and with the president's office as well. I suppose in part because I had enjoyed several years of being a master gardener volunteer in Virginia in connection with Virginia Tech's program. So we have another kind of connection. And this brings me to the final observation that I'd like to make about why Extension and 4-H are thriving and even leading the way for so much of what is happening at UMaine. I would like to think that the soundness of Dr. Seaman Knapp's vision and its timelessness are part of the reason. So I turn to the topic of learning. One of my own academic interests is STEM teaching and learning. Thus, I was particularly intrigued to find some of Seaman Knapp's own writing on this topic. In his own words, he described his method. Quote, "The aim of the farmers' cooperative demonstration work is to place a practical object lesson before the farm masses, illustrating the best and most profitable methods of producing the standard farm crops, and to secure such active participation in the demonstrations as to prove that the farmers can make a much larger average annual crop and secure a greater return for their toil." A couple of observations about this have struck me. Next slide, please. Sorry. One is that he applied a kind of theory of learning, not only to youth through his clubs and demonstration projects, but to adults, the farmers whose education he sought to advance. Today, we would talk about his work as active learning, experiential education, problem-based learning, and professional education. These approaches are critical for fostering learner success, and I believe in a land grant for serving the state well. In conclusion, it has just been delightful to take a brief step back in the throes of this pandemic, in this time of racial unrest, and as we see the ravages of our changing climate, to reflect upon a remarkable pioneer, Seaman Knapp, and to try to draw connections between his great contributions and that are so well understood in Extension and 4-H, to UMaine's past and present, and to solving the challenges of our times. And the lessons that I take from this are, first, in a pandemic and at any time, bringing science and research and scholarly work to the knotty problems that we face improves our chances of untangling and solving those problems. And secondly, in a pandemic and at any time, engaging professionals, communities, and young people in coming together to frame problems and collaboratively find solutions can improve our world significantly. Again, many, many thanks for having provided me with this opportunity today.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Franny Monday, for that address. And you have done a great service and honor to Dr. Knapp, as well as your institution and all land grants in making those associations and in providing that lecture. We very much appreciate it. You know, under normal times, we would present you with a very nice medal in person. Although it's a virtual presentation, I promise you it's a real medal. And
okay.
we will get that to you. It's so well deserved, and we appreciate that very much. And we offer you our heartfelt gratitude for your lecture today and honor your many contributions expanding Dr. Knapp's vision for the vital role of public service and land grants. So with a virtual applause, thank you so much for that address and congratulations.
Thank you so very much. Thank you all.
And back to you, Dr. McMeans.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Hutchins, and thank you so much, Dr. Farini Monday, for that wonderful presentation, and also to my former colleague for being so wise to recommend you. This was definitely, Dr. Whitehead, this was definitely an excellent presentation. And what was so amazing about it was I was just a guest lecturer at a graduate course at LSU. And the last question that the students asked me, do you deem land grant schools, especially research and extension areas, to be relevant today? And it was the easiest question that anyone has presented to me, but I thought your presentation did a good job of bringing that home, and I will probably ask the professor to reach out and get permission to use your presentation, because I think it's excellent. And my answer was, of course we are. As a matter of fact, I think we're even more relevant to today than we were 150 years ago, because of the fact that, as you stated, we probably surprised ourselves being as versatile and able to be fluid in times of something such as a pandemic. Because when we stopped, pivoted, I've seen extension react in a way I've not seen since I've been in the land grant field. And this is my 4th land grant institution. So we are indeed very relevant, as you can see by the presentations on the research and extension side that were presented today. I haven't taken this many notes in a while, and that bodes well to where we are as a land grant institution. So again, I want to thank you for your presentation. It was definitely one of my favorites that I've attended in the last 25 years. So thank you. And also, before we conclude this session, I have to thank Dr. Wendy Fink for organizing. I mean, I know we're only halfway there, Wendy, but I just want to thank you and the staff of APLU and those who support the BAA and Doug and the IT and communications team. You guys have done an outstanding job. And this was an excellent presentation. And I agree with my colleagues who have been in the chat stating that under the conditions, this has been an excellent session. So I really appreciate that. So this concludes our ceremony for today, but we encourage you to join us on November the 4th at 3 p.m. Eastern for the USDA Excellence in Teaching Award and the FSLI Honors Program. So we had pretty good attendance, so I look forward to seeing you next week and you be in the same attendance and encourage some of your colleagues in extension research and in teaching to be in attendance next week on November the 4th. And with that, that concludes our session, and be safe and have a good rest of your week. And I am going to look out the window and hope that Louisiana is still going to stay in place. So you guys take care and good night.